I still remember that night. The night his laughter echoed in my head like a cruel melody I couldn't silence. The man I loved, trusted, and built my world around was laughing at my pain. Ethan and I had been together for almost 5 years. He wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my biggest cheerleader, and the man who promised to make me feel safe forever. We met in college, a random group project that turned into endless coffee talks, late-night study sessions, and slow walks under campus lights. Back then, his laughter was my favorite sound. It was warm, contagious, full of life, like a song I never wanted to stop hearing. He used to say, "You and I, Mia, we're unbreakable." And for the longest time, I believed him. After graduation, life got busy, but beautiful. I got a small job at a design firm, while he started climbing the corporate ladder in a marketing company. We were building dreams, one small victory at a time. We moved in together, a cozy apartment filled with morning coffees, random dancing in the kitchen, and plans whispered at 2 a.m. about our future. But sometimes, love blinds you so completely that you don't see when it starts fading. It began with little things. His phone, once left casually on the table, now stayed face down. His busy nights started multiplying. He'd come home late, smelling like a different perfume. Subtle, floral, unfamiliar. I told myself not to overthink. I told myself that love requires trust. But deep down, something heavy began pressing against my chest. I started noticing the way he avoided eye contact when I spoke, how his smiles felt rehearsed. Still, I clung to hope, because hope was easier than heartbreak. Then one evening, everything changed. I was working on a last-minute design submission, and my laptop crashed. Ethan's was on the coffee table, open and unlocked. I thought nothing of it. I just needed to send one email. But when I clicked his browser, a message popped up. A chat window that shouldn't have been open. At first, I froze. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I saw her name, Clara. The messages weren't old. They were recent, and they weren't innocent. Words that once belonged to me were now being recycled for someone else. You're my peace. Can't wait to hold you again. I miss your smile, even in meetings. My eyes blurred. My hands shook. I scrolled and saw pictures. Dinners, hotel rooms. Moments that used to define us. Every line felt like a knife twisting in slow motion. When Ethan walked through the door, I was sitting there. Laptop open, my tears dry, my soul trembling. He looked at the screen, then at me. For a moment, I saw panic, but it quickly vanished. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look ashamed. Instead, he smirked. A half smile that turned into a quiet laugh. Then came the words I'll never forget. "Come on, Mia," he said casually. "It's not that serious. You're overreacting." His laughter filled the room. Loud, careless, cruel. It echoed off the walls and stabbed through my chest. In that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but my dignity. That laughter replayed in my mind like a broken record. The same man who once wiped my tears was now mocking them. The same man who promised to protect me was now the reason I felt destroyed. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't beg. I just stood there, silent. Because sometimes silence is the only thing left when words lose their meaning. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the balcony until the sky began to lighten. The city below felt distant, almost indifferent. I cried quietly. The kind of cry that comes from the deepest part of you, where pain and disbelief mix until you can't tell them apart. But when the tears stopped, something else took their place. A strange, calm strength. I realized that I couldn't control his choices, but I could control my response. I could either stay broken or rebuild myself into something unshakable. And in that silence, I made a promise to myself. Not out of hatred, but out of self-respect. He would regret this, not through chaos, not through revenge in the usual sense, but through my silence, my growth, my success. Because I knew his biggest weakness. He thrived on attention, on reaction, on power. So, I decided to give him none of it. I would smile, I would stay calm, and I would walk away, quietly, gracefully. The world would see him laugh at me today, but one day soon, he'd see what that laughter cost him. That night, I whispered to myself, "You just lost the best thing you ever had." And as I closed my eyes, I could almost hear a different kind of sound. Not his laughter, but the faint echo of something ending. That's when my silent revenge began. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, my lips trembling, but behind that tired reflection, I saw something fierce, a spark that had been buried under years of compromise. That was the moment I understood that real revenge doesn't come from shouting, fighting, or trying to hurt back. It comes from silence, from the kind of strength that makes the people who broke you crumble just by watching you rise. Ethan thought I'd beg him to stay. He thought I'd cry, plead, and forgive him like nothing happened. That was his pattern. Cause chaos, then charm his way out. So I gave him exactly what he didn't expect. Calm. I smiled at him like the pain never touched me. I even said, "You're right, Ethan. Maybe I was overreacting." The way his expression shifted, from arrogance to confusion, was priceless. He didn't know how to respond when I refused to play the part of the broken girl. Inside, though, I was torn apart. My heart ached, my chest felt heavy, and every breath carried a quiet scream. But I refused to let him see any of it. I learned that sometimes silence hurts more than any confrontation. So I stayed quiet. I let him think I was fine, while inside, I was rebuilding, piece by piece, layer by layer. I started small. I cleaned the apartment, organized every corner, and threw away things that reminded me of him. Not out of anger, but to make space for peace. I started working out every morning, not to look better for anyone else, but to feel alive again. The burn in my muscles reminded me that I was still here, still capable of pushing through pain. I began cooking real meals again, listening to music that healed me instead of breaking me, and spending evenings planning instead of crying. For years, I had wanted to start my own design studio. I had the talent, the experience, and the ideas, but not the confidence. I kept putting it off because I didn't want to make Ethan uncomfortable with my ambitions. Now I realized how foolish that was. My dreams were never too big. My circle had just been too small. So I decided to finally do it. I opened my old sketchbooks, dusted off my notes, and started mapping out my vision. I named it Lunar Works, because the moon doesn't compete with the sun. It shines on its own time, quietly and beautifully. Every night while Ethan was out, working late, or meeting friends, I sat at my desk, building my future. I learned new software, designed logos, created brand mock-ups, and researched clients. The pain that once consumed me turned into focus. My heartbreak became my motivation. Each night, I stayed up until my eyes burned, reminding myself that this was my turning point. He noticed my change, but he didn't understand it. One night, he asked, "What's keeping you so busy lately?" I smiled and said, "Just a little project." He shrugged it off, uninterested, and that was fine, because the less he knew, the more powerful my silence became. As days passed, I found a rhythm. My mornings began with calmness, not chaos. My nights were filled with purpose, not pain. Slowly my laughter returned, not the naive one I had before, but a quieter, wiser version. Every small achievement felt like a victory over the person he made me feel I had to be. Clara, the woman he cheated with, worked in his company's marketing department. I used to see her as competition, but now I didn't feel envy or hate. She was part of the illusion Ethan built for himself. shallow, temporary, replaceable. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted to rise so far above that neither of them could touch me, even if they tried. So I kept building. Every email I sent, every design I finished, every quiet night of work, it all added to my foundation. I didn't post about it online. I didn't talk about it to friends. I didn't need validation. I just worked in silence because I knew that one day my success would speak for itself. And slowly, something unexpected began to happen. The quieter I became, the more restless Ethan grew. My calmness unsettled him. My indifference chipped away at his ego. He couldn't read me anymore, couldn't predict my reactions, couldn't control my emotions. The power had shifted, and he didn't even realize when it happened. Each day I felt stronger, not because I wanted to get back at him, but because I was starting to get back to myself. My silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was preparation. The sound of my storm, gathering strength beneath the surface. I wasn't planning to destroy him. I was planning to rise so high that the view from where he stood would burn. Weeks went by, and Ethan's arrogance only seemed to grow. He didn't even bother to hide his relationship with Clara anymore. They were everywhere. Events, dinners, company functions, posing for pictures that were just discreet enough to deny, yet cruelly deliberate to sting. I'd see them online, her hand wrapped around his arm, both of them smiling like nothing had happened. People around us started whispering, pretending to pity me, but I could sense the quiet amusement behind their eyes. They saw me as the broken ex, the girl who got replaced. But I had learned something powerful in my silence. People stop pitying you the moment you start winning. While Ethan flaunted his betrayal, I focused on myself. I wasn't healing. I was rebuilding. My design studio, LunaWorks, launched quietly, without any announcement or fanfare. I didn't need attention. I needed momentum. Day and night, I worked on projects, polishing every detail until they reflected the strength I had regained. My pain became my creative fuel. My heartbreak turned into precision. I had finally found a way to turn my suffering into something that couldn't be mocked. A few weeks later, it happened. An online design magazine featured one of my works. I didn't even know they were considering it. When I woke up that morning, my phone was buzzing non-stop with messages. Friends, old classmates, even clients I hadn't met yet were congratulating me. The article praised my design for its emotional depth and clean aesthetic. Reading those words, I felt something inside me heal. For the first time since Ethan's betrayal, my worth wasn't tied to his opinion or his laughter. It was mine, earned and undeniable. Within days, the recognition turned into real opportunities. Clients started reaching out, my inbox filled with offers. LunaWorks was suddenly the name people wanted to work with. And then came the twist, an email that made me pause. It was from a corporate HR department, inquiring about a collaboration for a major rebranding campaign. The tone was formal and polite, nothing unusual. But when I scrolled to the bottom and saw the company name, I froze. It was Ethan's company. For a moment, I couldn't move. It felt surreal, almost scripted by fate. I reread it twice, and then a third time just to be sure. When I reached the section listing the project lead, I nearly laughed. The name was right there, Clara Weston. The universe had handed me my stage, not for revenge born of hate, but for justice wrapped in grace. I didn't hesitate. I accepted the project immediately, signing under my professional name, Monsieur Rivera. They wouldn't even know who they were dealing with until it was too late. The day of the first meeting came sooner than I expected. I arrived early, composed and confident. My heart was steady. I wore a simple black suit, my hair neatly tied back. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just quiet power. When Ethan walked into the conference room, he was laughing with his team, Clara by his side. His voice was loud, his confidence untouched, until he saw me. His laughter died mid-sentence. His expression froze. I smiled politely. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my tone calm and professional. "I'm Mia Rivera, founder and lead designer at LunaWorks. I'll be handling your rebranding project." The silence that followed was everything I had imagined it would be. The HR manager looked confused, unsure why the air suddenly thickened. Ethan's mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Clara's face drained of color. She fumbled with her notepad, pretending to read something that wasn't there. I simply continued, outlining the creative direction and project goals as if they were just another client. Every word I spoke came from a place of power, not bitterness. Ethan tried to recover his composure, clearing his throat. "I didn't realize you were," he began, but I cut him off gently, keeping my tone polite but firm. "It's all right. I prefer to let my work introduce me these days." I could see the tension in his jaw, the flicker of discomfort in his eyes. Clara avoided looking at me altogether. The rest of the meeting went on with forced professionalism on their side and effortless control on mine. When it ended, Ethan didn't say a word. He just nodded awkwardly as I packed up my laptop. As I walked out of that room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass door. Calm, confident, untouchable. Behind me, Ethan stood frozen in silence. For the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Not arrogance, not amusement, but fear. Not the fear of being exposed, but the fear of realizing he had underestimated the wrong person. That moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and powerful. The kind of revenge that didn't need words. Because true revenge isn't about destruction. It's about evolution. It's about standing tall, while they drown in the weight of their own choices. The following weeks tested every ounce of my self-control. Day after day, I had to walk into meetings, sit across from Ethan and Clara, and act like everything was perfectly normal. I smiled when required, took notes when needed, and presented my work with calm precision. On the outside, it looked professional. On the inside, it was poetic justice unfolding slowly. Every polite smile from me was like holding up a mirror to their guilt, and they couldn't stand the reflection. Clara tried her best to maintain her composure, but I saw the unease in her every movement. She avoided direct eye contact, her laughter forced, her confidence fading with each passing day. Her voice trembled slightly whenever she addressed me, like she was constantly second-guessing herself. Ethan, meanwhile, pretended to be unfazed. He was loud, overly cheerful, even complimentary toward me in front of others. "Great work as always, Mia," he'd say, his tone dripping with false sincerity. But I could read him too well. His laugh was shorter now, his posture tighter, his charm starting to crack. He began sending me messages late at night. They started innocently, work-related follow-ups that didn't really need answers. Then came the personal ones. "You've really changed," one read. Another said, "Let's not hold grudges, okay? Life's too short." The last one was the most telling. "Maybe we could start over, at least as friends." I didn't respond to a single one. Silence became my answer, and that silence haunted him far more than anger ever could. He wasn't used to being ignored by me. That quiet indifference burned louder than any confrontation. While I stayed silent, I made sure my work spoke. I poured everything into the project. Clarity, structure, precision. Every decision I made was strategic. Every detail flawless. I didn't sabotage him or twist anything. I just let the truth do its job. Ethan and Clara's team missed updates, failed to meet deadlines, and made careless mistakes. I documented everything neatly, submitted my parts on time, and watched as management slowly started questioning their performance. No lies, no tricks, just accountability finding its way home. The real turning point came during a big client review meeting. It was late evening, and tension filled the room even before the discussion started. I delivered my presentation smoothly, answering every question with quiet confidence. When it was Ethan's turn, he stumbled. His explanations were messy, his data incomplete. The clients started to notice. One of them leaned back, frowning. "This seems poorly coordinated," she said. "Who's leading this section?" Her eyes landed on Ethan. He tried to defend himself, but the more he spoke, the more obvious his disorganization became. The meeting ended with polite smiles from the clients and a heavy silence from our side. As people began leaving, Ethan stopped me in the hallway. His tone was sharper than usual, his voice low but trembling. "Mia, are you enjoying this?" he asked, his eyes hard and searching. I turned to him and met his gaze without hesitation. "No, Ethan," I said softly. "I'm just doing my job. Maybe that's new to you." For a moment, he just stood there, speechless. I could see the frustration in his expression, the flicker of realization that he no longer had control over me. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Then he turned and walked away, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the corridor. That was the exact moment I knew I'd won. Not by destroying him, but by staying calm while he unraveled. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, deliberate, and precise. Every choice I made, every silence I kept, stripped him of the power he once held over me. The man who once laughed at my pain now flinched at my peace. And from that day forward, Ethan stopped laughing. A month later, the project finally ended. I could feel the tension lift as the last presentation wrapped up and the final reports came in. LunaWorks received glowing feedback. Professional, innovative, precise. Ethan's department, however, didn't share the same praise. Their section was criticized for poor communication and lack of leadership. The emails that circulated afterward made it clear the executives were disappointed and changes were coming. Within a week, Clara resigned quietly. No formal announcement, no farewell messages, just gone. A few days later, whispers began circulating that Ethan's entire department was being reviewed for underperformance. The same man who once laughed at my pain was now standing in the middle of his own professional collapse. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just watched, calm and still, as the world rearranged itself exactly how it was meant to. My revenge hadn't come from plotting. It had come from patience. Every small act of restraint, every moment I chose silence over anger, had led to this. I hadn't needed to destroy him. I had just needed to let him face what he had created. Then one night, long after the project had ended, my phone rang. It was late, close to midnight. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won. The name flashing on my screen still carried a faint sting. Ethan. I pressed accept and brought the phone to my ear. His voice came through, quiet and trembling. "Mia," he said. I messed up. I stayed silent, letting him speak. "You were the only one who ever believed in me," he continued, his tone broken, raw. "Everything's falling apart now. Clara's gone. The team's turning against me. I don't even recognize myself anymore." His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time in years, I heard something in him that had never existed before. Regret. Real, aching regret. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to explain. The silence stretched between us until he finally asked, "Why didn't you fight for us, Mia? Why didn't you stop me?" I felt a strange calm wash over me. "Because, Ethan," I said softly, "I wasn't meant to fight for someone who laughed at my pain. I was meant to rise from it." There was a pause on the line. I could hear his shaky breathing, the sound of someone realizing the full weight of what they'd lost. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I wish I'd never lost you." For a brief second, a trace of the old ache flickered inside me. But it didn't last. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was free. "I hope you find yourself again," I said gently, then ended the call. Not out of anger or cruelty, but peace. That click, The soft sound of the line disconnecting felt like closure, the kind I had once begged for, but now owned entirely. I set my phone down and sat in the quiet of my apartment, the city lights flickering outside the window. For the first time since that night, his laughter had broken me. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It soothed. It was the sound of peace, of release, of freedom. I had finally turned the pain he gave me into power. And in that quiet moment, I realized something simple but profound. Revenge wasn't about making him suffer. It was about never letting him have power over me again. Months turned into seasons, and life quietly transformed into something unrecognizable. From the girl who once cried herself to sleep over Ethan's betrayal, the nights that were once filled with questions. Why me? What did I do wrong? Were now filled with plans, designs, and dreams that belonged solely to me. Luna Works, the small studio I had built out of heartbreak, had grown into a full-fledged design firm with a reputation that made even my old insecurities fade into dust. I often sat in my office late at night, the glow of the city reflecting through the glass, thinking about how far I had come. Not once did I feel the urge to call him or tell him about my success. Some stories didn't need an audience. They just needed to be lived. There was a time when I believed that silence was weakness, that speaking out, shouting, and demanding answers were the only ways to heal. But as the months passed, I learned that true power lived in restraint, in the ability to rise without noise, to rebuild without validation. I had stopped chasing apologies and started chasing excellence. Every client I signed, every award I received, every late night spent perfecting a design was a quiet declaration that I didn't need his laughter, his approval, or his presence to define me. My revenge wasn't fire. It was light, steady, warm, and untouchable. Sometimes people from our past circle reached out. They congratulated me, mentioned how proud they were, or subtly hinted at how different things were for Ethan now. Rumors spread that he had been demoted, that Clara had left him, that his department was struggling to recover from the project fiasco. I didn't ask for details. I didn't even smile at the news. It wasn't joy I felt. It was closure. A quiet knowing that the universe had its own way of balancing things. I had no desire to see him fail. I simply no longer cared if he succeeded. One evening, as I was preparing for a major client event, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Ethan. For a moment, I just stared at it, the way one might look at an old photograph. I didn't answer. He called again and again. Finally, curiosity won over habit, and I picked up. His voice was softer than I remembered, stripped of arrogance, heavy with something unfamiliar. Regret. Mia. He began, hesitating. I know you don't owe me anything, but I needed to hear your voice. I stayed silent, listening. He continued, his words tumbling out like a confession. I messed up everything. I lost Clara. I lost my job. And somewhere along the way, I lost myself. You were the only one who believed in me, and I threw that away. I don't even know who I am anymore. There was a time when hearing those words would have shattered me, or made me want to fix him. But not now. Not this version of me. I took a deep breath and replied softly, Ethan, I didn't walk away because I stopped caring. I walked away because I started caring about myself. He went quiet. I could hear his breath, uneven, as if he was searching for words that no longer mattered. Why didn't you fight for us? He finally asked, his voice breaking. I looked out the window at the city lights flickering below, each one a reminder of how much strength it took to get here. Because Ethan, I said, I wasn't meant to fight for someone who laughed at my pain. I was meant to rise from it. There was a long silence, the kind that carries both realization and regret. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, I wish I'd never lost you. For a moment, I closed my eyes. letting those words hang in the air. They no longer hurt. They simply existed, like echoes from another life. "You didn't lose me, Ethan," I said calmly. "You just taught me who I was without you." Then, without anger or bitterness, I ended the call. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. What I felt was peace, a deep, still peace that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. It was the kind of peace that comes when you finally stopped chasing closure and started living your truth. I realized then that revenge had never been about watching him fall. It was about proving to myself that I could rise. Weeks passed, and I continued to grow, both personally and professionally. Luna Works expanded into new cities, and my designs were featured in international exhibitions. Every milestone felt like another step away from the person I used to be. I had become everything I once doubted I could be. And though Ethan still lingered in the background, liking my posts, watching my stories, and existing quietly at the edges of my success, he no longer had power over me. His presence was nothing more than a reminder of how far I had come and how silent victory can be. Sometimes, people asked how I managed to get back at him, expecting a story filled with drama, confrontation, or revenge plots. But I would just smile and say, by choosing myself, because that's what it was. Choosing myself every single day. Choosing peace over chaos, growth over resentment, silence over shouting. I had learned that not every battle needs a weapon. Some are won with grace. One afternoon, I found myself back at the old cafe, where Ethan and I used to spend hours talking about dreams. It was almost empty now, quiet except for the hum of soft music. I ordered the same drink I used to share with him, and as I sipped it, I realized how much I had changed. The memories didn't sting anymore. They were just stories, fragments of a life I had outgrown. When I stepped outside, the wind brushed against my face, cool and gentle. I smiled to myself, not because I had won against him, but because I had finally won against the version of me who thought she needed his love to feel whole. Silence, I realized, was never emptiness. It was strength, a language the broken rarely understand until they heal. Ethan lost more than my love. He lost access to my peace, my laughter, my presence. He lost the right to ever mock my pain again. And me? I gained something far greater. The kind of calm that can't be shaken. The kind of success that doesn't need to be shown off. And the kind of silence that speaks louder than revenge ever could.